sentence. If you finish the sentence, I could tell them. Looks like Christina's up there.
The mighty Quinn, come all without, come all within. You ain't seen nothing like the mighty. Hello, everyone. I'm Bill Ritter of Channel 7 Eyewitness News, WABC TV, and welcome once again to the Countdown. This time, a live edition of the Countdown. We're going live because history today was made in Albany. Kathy Hochul is now the 57th governor of New York and the first female to lead the Empire State. During her rather whirlwind day of swearing-in ceremonies, meetings, and public addresses, one sentence stood out to us. Ms. Hochul saying she, quoting now, wants people to believe in their government again. She also said she would make masks mandatory in public schools and wants a requirement that all school staff be vaccinated or face weekly testing. 10 years and 3 months ago, she was county clerk in Erie County. Now she's Governor Hochul. We're going to hear from our political analysts about the day's news. But first, here's Eyewitness News reporter in Albany, Jim Dolan.
Governor Kathy Hochul wasted no time in creating some considerable distance between herself and the outgoing administration, saying ethics and openness will be the lodestar of her administration.
And that begins with a dramatic change in culture, with accountability and no tolerance for individuals who cross the line. Today, I'm directing an overhaul of state government policies on sexual harassment and ethics, starting with requiring that all training be done live, instead of allowing people to click their way through a class.
It's not just a phase, she promised. It is what she stands for.
And a new era of transparency will be one of my hallmarks of my administration. To me, it's very simple. We'll focus on open, ethical governing that New Yorkers will trust.
Of course, there is work on many fronts in New York State, including COVID, just as schools are preparing to open.
Priority number one, we get children back to school and protect the environment so they can learn and everyone is safe. We need to require vaccinations for all school personnel with an option to test out weekly, at least for now.
The new administration was met with a warm welcome from Democrats across the state, including Mayor de Blasio, who the new governor promised to work with instead of against.
I do think as a human being, she's a good human being, an open person, a person who cares, a person who listens, a person who wants to work with people. And that's exactly what we need for some healing in this state and the ability to move forward.
The new governor said in her administration, women would be valued and supported.
It's our time to unleash the power of New York's women and make sure that any barriers to success and opportunity are eradicated once and for all. And time to show the world that ever upward is more than just our state's motto. It's who we are and it's where we're going.
Hochul's goal today, tell a new audience who she is and what she stands for.
You'll find me to be direct, straight-talking, and decisive. I will not be deterred, and I'm willing to be bloodied and marred in the pursuit of what's right for the people of this great state. My friends, I invite you to join me in this fight for our future. I only ask for your faith in me and for your prayers.
That was Jim Dolan reporting. I want to reiterate those new school rules as enunciated by the new governor. Anyone entering a school, student, a teacher, or visitor, including vendors, must mask up. And school staff must be vaccinated or be tested weekly. Joining us now to talk about all of this, former New York City Council Speaker and the Vice Chair of the Democratic Party in the state of New York, Christine Quinn. Ms. Quinn, thank you for joining us once again on the Countdown. What was your take on the new governor's first speech as governor?
Oh dear.
We have an audio problem. Are you muted, Christine? Maybe you are. One of the rare times ever, if that's true. We cannot hear you now. We will try to get you back, Chris. How about that, since we're live tonight? Okay, we'll get back to you, to Christine Quinn, in a moment after we figure out how to hear from her, but she's never been silenced before. One of Governor Cuomo's last acts in office causing some controversy and a bit of anger tonight. Mr. Cuomo granting clemency to the last surviving member of the Weather Underground who was sentenced in a deadly armored car heist in Rockland County 40 years ago. His name is David Gilbert. He was the getaway driver, and he was serving 75 years to life. 2 cops and a guard were killed. Mr. Cuomo said prison rehabilitated Mr. Gilbert. Here's Eyewitness News reporter Marcus Solis.
My brother can't come back 40 years later.
40 years of heartbreak for Mary Crowley. In 1981, her brother, Sergeant Edward O'Grady, was gunned down during the infamous Brinks robbery. Yesterday, the getaway driver in the heist had his 75-year-to-life sentence commuted by Andrew Cuomo during his final hours as governor. O'Grady's nephew is a Clarkstown police officer.
We've known that Governor Cuomo is a coward. He has never contacted any of the 9 children who lost a father, and like a coward, he did this on his way out the door.
Gilbert was a member of the radical group The Weather Underground and participated in the botched robbery at the Nanuet Mall. Peter Page, one of 2 Brinks drivers who were shot, died at the scene. Sergeant O'Grady and Officer Waverly Brown were killed in a shootout in Nyack when police pulled over the fleeing suspects. This afternoon, members of law enforcement expressed their anger.
Commutation of David Gilbert's sentence is horrible, disgraceful, and unforgivable.
Gilbert's son is now the district attorney in San Francisco. In a tweet, Chezaboudin said his father never intended harm, yet his crime devastated many families. My heart breaks for the families that can never get their loved ones back. In a 1998 interview posted by Freedom Archives, Gilbert was asked if he accepted responsibility.
Yes, I do take responsibility. I would rather be accountable to a community group or something that represented legitimate power, not this murderous government.
That's not good enough for many.
He's never reached out for the families. He never has repented in any way except for his political allies to get out of jail.
Besides outrage, there was a plea from law enforcement to the general public for residents to reach out to the parole board in hopes of denying David Gilbert's release. In Nyack, Marcus Solis, Channel 7, Eyewitness News.
Controversy to the end. I'm told that our audio problems with Miss Christine Quinn are solved. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
That's the most important thing, and yes, we can.
Yes, good.
What did you think of the new governor's speech today?
I thought Kathy hit exactly the right tone today. She was clear, she was concise, she focused on the issue she had to, that of transparency, sexual harassment, and ethics, because if she can't restore faith in the governor's office, as she said, then it's going to be very hard to take on the other issues. But she didn't only focus on ethics. She also talked about the pandemic and other issues that New Yorkers are really worried about and worried that this transition might affect. And I think she really calmed people's fears. I also think it was smart for her to take a little bit of time to introduce herself, because folks downstate don't know her as much as the folks in Buffalo and upstate.
Yeah, and in fact, there hasn't been as you know, Christine, there has not been a governor representing the western part of the state and the upstate part of the state for 100 years.
Yeah, for a really long time. And let me tell you, Kathy loves Buffalo. But I've spent time with her in the 5 boroughs, and I know she really believes that we're only going to succeed as a state if every county works together.
She did seem to hit several notes I want to talk to you about. First, before we get into the weeds, politically speaking, she asked people for their prayers and for their thoughts and their support, as if, listen, this is a big job. You know what? 10 years and 3 months ago, she was the county clerk of Erie County. She's now the governor of the state of New York. And I thought when she did that, it was a very human kind of approach to this. I need your help.
It was very human, very humbling. I remember actually when Pope Francis got, I was going to say sworn in, that's the wrong word,
yes,
but I guess elevated. Yeah. He too asked for people's prayers. And I think it sends a message that she sees herself as part of a team, not a lone wolf out there, and that she really wants everyone to be working together. And I thought that was powerful.
She talked about her family. She talked about her mother raised in a home where there was domestic abuse. That was the first time I had heard that. She talked about her father. You know, they were pretty tough financial times, according to her biography, where at one point the family lived in a trailer because they just didn't have any money.
Nothing has come easy to Kathy Hochul. She has worked incredibly hard. She and her family have overcome tremendous odds. And I think that what she shared about her mother and domestic violence really shows what a critical person her mother was in her life, but also shows that her commitment to women and girls and violence survivors comes from experience, comes from lived experience, and there is nothing more powerful than that.
She also talked about changing the culture. She didn't mention her predecessor, but she certainly was talking about him, talking about changing the culture, not just in the governor's mansion, but in Albany and at the Capitol as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, she didn't have to mention, Cuomo's name. I think it was abundantly clear. And there have been a lot of fits and starts, if you will. as it relates to changing Albany's culture. But if there ever was a tragic moment that should be seized to do that, it's this moment. So I was really glad she said that and made the announcement she did about overhauling training and about women being honored in the administration, because having the first woman governor in New York is such a breakthrough. That should be bringing more women and girls into government and politics, not pushing them away because of what happened before.
And her top two aides, of course, were women that she announced yesterday. I have something to call to your attention, because I think we talked about this when 3 weeks ago today, when the report came out, and then a week later, 2 weeks ago, Mr. Cuomo said he was going to leave. We talked to you, and we talked to Chairman Nick Langworthy of the Republican Party, head of the Republican Party here in New York, and he was glowing about the then lieutenant governor, glowing, saying she's easy to work with, she really gets it, she talks, she wants to have a bipartisan thing. And today, on our air, Chairman Nick Langworthy said, well, she's just not consistent, you can't trust her. And it was like, whoa, wait, is this the same guy? I felt like we should pull out the bite from two weeks ago. What's your take on this? Is that just like, okay, political season is now here, they were trashing Cuomo 2 weeks ago, the Republicans were, and now they're going to start trashing the lieutenant governor, who's now the new governor?
Yeah, it's what you call politics and the hypocrisy that sometimes goes along with it. But, I think the first thing the chair said is what people are going to see. A governor who wants to get things done, who will work with whomever makes sense to get things done and will deliver. Now, if the Republicans in New York State kind of want to go into their corner and not get involved in continuing to end the pandemic, if they don't want to get involved in bringing the economy back in an inclusive way, that's up to them and their true colors will be shown.
Well, no matter what party you're from, I think we need to focus. I think most New Yorkers would say we need to focus on getting the economy going and getting rid of this pandemic. Christine Quinn, always a pleasure, and glad we got your microphone.
Me too. That was a horrible feeling, not being able to talk.
I'm sure it's something you're not used to. Chris, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Take care.
We have one more note to tell you about Governor Cuomo, former Governor Cuomo. He was stripped today of the Emmy he received for his coronavirus briefings. The briefings which became national de rigueur watching every day got an Emmy. The National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences says it rescinded the Emmy because of the Attorney General's sexual harassment report and the governor's resignation. More politics now with our political team. We want to bring them in. ABC News political director Rick Klein and veteran political consultant Hank Sheinkopf. Gentlemen, I just want to get an IFB check. Can you hear me? And can we hear you?
10-4. Got you, Bill.
Perfect. Okay. Rick, what did you think of the, I know you were on vacation last week. You come back and boom, there's a new governor in your home state.
Yeah, what a whirlwind 2 weeks. And the fact that it's only 3 weeks since the Tish James report and 2 weeks since a lot's happened in that time. I think now Governor Hochul has a golden opportunity for a clean slate. You mentioned the Republican praise she's gotten at times. I think that's actually less important than the general sense among New Yorkers who are tired of Andrew Cuomo, tired of the culture that he created, and looking for a new opportunity. And I think she was concise today. She laid out some of the core principles, starting with ethics in government. And I think it's a huge opportunity that she's just beginning to come into her own around now after this very, very short but very long 2 weeks since Governor Cuomo's announcement.
Hank, you've given your share of talking points to candidates and politicians who go on and give a speech. How did she do? Did she miss anything she should have brought up?
No, she was to the point and smart and didn't get too much information and that was unnecessary. And she set the stage. What's the stage? The stage is, I'm not Andrew Cuomo. Let's see what happens tomorrow. Let's see if that works for a while. It probably will until the gang up starts.
And Rick, as Christine Quinn said, I assume you heard that interview. She did not mention Mr. Cuomo, not once by name, but he was talked about all over the speech.
Yeah, and I think it was so striking to me, in her first address after Cuomo's announcement, when she came out and said, I've never been close to him emotionally, physically, otherwise. She's nodding to that. We know that. I think New Yorkers know that. No one had to hear the Cuomo name. And I think for her to establish independence. It's not an easy thing to do necessarily. You know, she ran with him twice. She was his lieutenant governor. Whatever distance you can try to create after the fact, they were on a ticket together a couple of times. But still, I think there's a chance here that's fairly unusual in this kind of relationship to start over. People aren't going to mistake her for Andrew Cuomo for a whole range of reasons, starting with the culture that she's putting into place. And I think it's in the context of the moment. I think it's probably sound advice to say the less is said about your predecessor, the better. She doesn't owe Andrew Cuomo anything, and I think she's making that clear.
And he didn't seem to owe her much either, because he didn't include her in many of the events of the last year or two. Certainly not during the things that got him an Emmy that's now been received.
Her name wasn't on the Emmy. That's exactly right.
Exactly. Hank, I'm just looking at all the things I wrote down during the speech, because I anchored the introduction to it, and the subjects, they're all there. I mean, she talked about the first two things are getting the economy going and killing this coronavirus pandemic. But then she talked about mental health and fighting crime and fighting racism and getting new jobs and raise the banner to help women. And then she kept saying, it's our time. And she asked, as I said earlier, she asked for people's support, which I thought was a very real and humane thing to do.
Very real, very humane, asking for people to come together, very smart, and also listing a menu of lists of accomplishments that she wants to do, which we used to call bite-sized achievements. Now she can talk about wanting to do them, and they will sound like they're achievements. The problem here is that the left will try to hamper her from day one. Why? The vote is downstate. It's a left vote. It's in the 5 boroughs. That's how you win gubernatorial races in New York State. And they'll tolerate her for a while until they can figure out a way to put Cuomo around her neck, plus the fact that she's a centrist. I'm
going to ask each of you the question about what I asked Christine Quinn about, and that is that the chairman of the Republican Party praised her when Cuomo announced his retirement and his resignation in 2 weeks. That was 2 weeks ago today. And all of a sudden, Nick Langworth, the chairman of the Republican Party in New York, today just blasted her. I mean, trashed her. Rick?
Yeah, someone got his talking points in order. That's what you'd expect out of the Republican Party. And I think, look, that in some ways I think is going to be the least of her concerns. I think Hank is right, per usual, in pointing out that the bigger concerns for a Democrat in New York are going to come on the left. And she's going to have a very crowded primary field. Republican critiques will always matter, but I think ultimately the Democrats will have a good opportunity to hold on to the governor's office once they get through this primary. I think Lee Zeldin and other Republicans who are looking for that seat, they recognize that the only way to win in New York is to put scandal next to the name of the incumbent, and they can make a case around the Democratic Party. They're going to definitely try to link Hochul to Cuomo whenever they can, but she's going to have to navigate some very complicated politics, starting with the regional politics. And her choice of a lieutenant governor is going to be huge. The indications of choosing someone from New York, from the city, critical, I think, in that, and trying to show that she gets it, and she'll have an opportunity and a head start on anyone else that wants that job.
She was 10 years and 3 months ago, Hank, county clerk in Erie County. And she knows that 40 or 44% of the population of this state is in New York City.
Well, look, the woman is extraordinarily smart. She comes from a place in the state. I've worked all over the state and I've worked all over the country. And let me tell you something. Erie County is gun battle politics every day. The ethnic divisions, the racial divisions, the demographics. It's a tough place to work in. Buffalo has gone through terrible times. Diminishment of population, which is fairly consistent. Look, Nick Langworthy got it right the first time. He said he had regional and geographic pride in where she was. That's what he was really saying. And then he figured out she was a Democrat and came to bash her.
There you go.
She's going to have to be in the center somehow and still be on the left. And that two-step is tough to do. It's called triangulation. Only one guy's done it successfully that I know of. I worked for him. His name was William Jefferson Clinton.
And we've heard of him, that's for sure. Rick, I'm going to give you the last word. I do a quick talk about Afghanistan and President Biden's speech today. And Martha Raddatz just put out an email saying that he got President Biden today on the G7 summit phone call about Afghanistan, got pushback from Britain and France, and he's a little weaker about getting help out because they really let him have it.
Yeah, and you saw him, I think for the first time, really open the door to the possibility that August 31st is going to slide. Listen to what he said today. He says he needs the cooperation, the partnership of the Taliban. people that we've been fighting for 2 decades in Afghanistan. And so now he needs them to get along and to go along with this. So to my mind, he was laying the groundwork for the hard decisions that'll be ahead. If you thought the last week was bad, I think the next week has the potential to be even worse, with American interests truly in jeopardy. And I think Biden is recognizing that and allowing a little bit of wiggle room around that deadline.
Hank, Democrats and Republicans alike don't like what they're seeing. And if we leave people who fought with Americans and helped Americans for 20 years, no matter how boneheaded it was to stay in this war for the longest war ever in the history of the United States, there are people who just think this is just not what Americans supposed to do.
That's part of it, but NATO. There's NATO blood on that ground. There's the first time that provision of the NATO Charter which says, by the way, if one is attacked, we need you, was ever invoked on behalf of the United States of America or anybody else. A lot of dead people from NATO. A lot of bad things happening, and a lot of Pakistan nearby with hundreds of nuclear weapons. It's a very bad situation for the world.
War is not good for children and other living things. It was said years ago, and it is true now. Hank Scheinkoff, Rick Klein, thank you, gentlemen, so much for being this live edition of The Countdown. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you,
Take
Bill.
care. By the way, you can watch Governor Hochul's entire message to New Yorkers given today on her first day on our website and streaming now on all of our apps. Thank you so much for joining us in this special edition of The Countdown. I'm Bill Ritter, and from all of us here at WABC TV and ABC7NY.com, we wish you health and peace. And let's take care of each other.